And since we have kind of a short amount of time and a busy agenda, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Claudette from Maryland Hunger Solutions, who is here to kind of take us through what exactly an ABAWD is, what it means for our SNAP clients, and then we're going to talk about the impact that this is going to have on Montgomery County residents, particularly those who are newly ABAWDs. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Claudette. If you have any questions while Claudette is speaking, please put them in the chat. I will keep an eye on the chat, try to answer them. And if I cannot answer them, I'll ping Claudette to do so. So with that, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm Claudette Miranda. I'm part of Maryland Hunger Solutions. I'm the Senior SNAP Program Associate. And today we have an ABAWD Basics training. This is a training kind of just covering everything ABAWD and including all of the changes that have been made as a result of HR1. I'm going to share my screen and let me know when you can see it.
I can see it.
Okay, perfect. So just a brief overview of what we'll cover today. The first thing is definitely understanding what is ABAWD, what are the work requirements and what are time limits, how to fulfill these work requirements, exemptions to work requirements, how to verify your working hours, how to verify any disabilities to exempt you from work requirements, understanding what good cause is, and regaining eligibility. So everything that you'll see in blue is hyperlinked, so you should be able to access these resources when we send out the slides. Well, when Allison sends out the slides. But an ABAWD stands for an able-bodied adult without dependents. So these are individuals aged 18 to 64 without any dependents under the age of 14 and do not have a documented exemption. So as we know, after November 1st, this age requirement was increased from 18 to 54 to 18 to 64. So all of this information is current. So this is how we're functioning as a result of the changes of HR1. So ABODs must complete 80 hours a month or 20 hours a week of work, paid employment, volunteer service, or employment training through a SNAP ENT provider. There are other options, but these are the most common and what people most refer to when trying to complete that 80-hour a month requirement. And not being able to fulfill these requirements, this 80-hour a month requirement results in a loss of SNAP benefits after 3 months in a 36-month period, so a 3-year period. So what are the work requirements? Like I mentioned in the last slide, to continue receiving SNAP with no interruptions, you're required to declare at least 80 hours a month or 20 hours a week of one or a combination of any of these three. You can find more ways to fulfill these work requirements here where I have hyperlinked at the bottom, but like I mentioned, these are the most popular or most promoted, I would say, when thinking about what are ways to fulfill these work requirements. So unpaid volunteer work, paid employment, and then enrolling in a SNAP ENT program. So the SNAP ENT program, it connects recipients to job-focused training programs. So usually these programs last about 12 to 16 weeks, can be in welding, construction, IT, culinary studies or programs, is meant to provide job placement and retention support and other services. And in the hyperlinks, you should be able to find which we will go over later as well, but the participating vendors who have people enrolled in SNAP ENT program. So, looking at unpaid volunteer opportunities, someone who has to fulfill these ABAWD work requirements can participate in a volunteer program at a nonprofit organization for an average of 20 hours a week, a minimum of 80 hours a month. So the only requirement, as based on DHS's policy guide, is that the organization be registered as a nonprofit organization, but they are looking for ways to expand. I know that DHS has been looking at having people volunteer at community schools as a way to fulfill that work requirement. So that is something that DHS is looking for and can accept as part of your unpaid volunteer hours for the sake of fulfilling this work requirement. So you must report your volunteer hours at the time of your MBR, so your Maryland Benefit Review Form or your recertification. So usually ABODs have a shorter certification period um, of 4 months so that they are able to verify those either working hours to make sure that they're meeting the work requirements. And that can be any one of the ones that we've mentioned so far. Some of the other work options are engaging in a combination of the work options. So this could be volunteering 10 hours a week and having like a part-time job for 10 hours a week, totaling 20 hours a week. So similarly, you would still need to report your working hours at the time of simplified reporting and recertification, but you can do multiple to fulfill this 80-hour a month requirement because sometimes it may not be possible to volunteer for 20 hours a week at one singular place or um have somewhere that can give you 80 hours of paid employment or 80 hours of volunteer work. So here are the exemptions. So um you're exempt from work requirements from pregnancy, if you're taking care of a child younger than age 6, already working, receiving unemployment benefits, or applied for unemployment benefits. So previously, and you can just see the list here, I won't go through all of them, but previously, people who were experiencing homelessness, who were veterans and foster care youth that aged out, were exempt from these work requirements. So they did not have to fulfill these work requirements. Those exemptions no longer exist. So previously exempt populations are now subject to ABAWD work requirements. The only new exemption that has been added are part of like qualifying Native American populations under the IHCIA. Um, and then they're very specific populations as well. So understanding what a time limit is, if a recipient is a ABAWD and they don't meet the work requirements of 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month, they can only receive SNAP benefits for three quote unquote free months in a 3-year period. So if they do meet the work requirements, there is no time limit. The time limit is the 3 months, which is how long you can be on SNAP without fulfilling the work requirements. So you can keep receiving benefits as long as you continue to be eligible, meet non-financial and financial eligibility requirements, and fulfill the work requirements. So Maryland's current 3-year period has ran from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2026. So next year it'll be up and the clock will reset. So there will be additional, the clock will reset and so will the time limits. So to just show a scenario, for example, Alex in January of 2025 applies for SNAP. Alex is eligible, they're an ABAWD, and they are not working. They get full SNAP benefits. The second month, Alex is still not working, volunteering, or enrolled in training. Their SNAP will continue. Month 3, still no working, volunteering, or training. Their SNAP will continue. In month 4, the time limit has been reached. There's been 3 months without meeting a requirement. So Alex's SNAP benefits will stop. So these free months do not have to be consecutive. So you can, for example, use one free month while you're looking for employment or looking for your volunteer opportunity. The next month you find something, you've only used 1 month of that time limit. You haven't used your 3 months. They don't have to be consecutive. In addition, prorated or partial months don't count towards the time limit or free months. So if someone applies um, October the 20th and they will receive back benefits, they will receive benefits from the time that they applied. But October won't count as a free month or count against them in the time limit because they haven't had a full month. It's only been 10 days. So it's prorated or partial months do not count. If benefits are interrupted because of not fulfilling the work requirements, they can resume through reapplication and fulfilling the work requirements, or unless a person already has an exemption or qualifies for an exemption. Um, so for example, we'll go over what a non-consecutive time limit can look like. So Jamie isn't working or training the first month in January. They'll use their first time limit month. In month 2, Jamie starts a part-time job, meets 80 hours a month. No time limit month has been used. Month 3, still working, no time limit month used. Month 4, Jamie's job ends. Second time limit month has been used. From May to August, Jamie joins a training program that meets this requirement. No time limit is used. Month 9, Jamie drops the training, isn't working, has used their third time limit month. So it doesn't have to be consecutive. So we'll talk a little bit about what verifying working hours with DHS looks like. So recipients can use something called the 500B form to verify their work activity. So the participating organization will record the weekly hours, and then both the participant and the supervisor must sign the form. So once an ABAWD's work hours are verified, there is no ongoing verification that's needed until the next time that they have to complete their redetermination or their MBR. Anyone that was, let's say, for example, already working at the time of their initial application was already working 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month minimum, is exempt from the work requirements, but must report to DHS if they at any time during their certification period are not meeting the 20-hour a week requirement. So this is what a 500B form looks like. I believe DHS is looking at maybe revamping the form and making it a bit more friendly. So this is what the form looks like. As you can see, they do require supervisory signatures. You can see what kind of activity is it? Is it volunteer? Is it job readiness, work, education, any of those? And then you'll be able to fill this out and turn this in at the time of your redeterminations or simplified reporting. For people experiencing disabilities, they can also use what's called the 500A form, which is a form that can be filled out by a licensed healthcare provider to confirm that the recipient is unable to work or take part in any kind of work-related activities, specifying the duration of the disability and including their information. So case managers do have the discretion when applying an ABAWD exemption due to a disability, but they are required to include what kind of disability people are going to be exempt for. And I believe it's eligibility and enrollment, which is kind of like their internal system. Um, so I'll show this 500A form. that has been made available. So as you see, the both forms are linked here. But you can see healthcare providers, very broad. So all that is required is um, any certified or licensed healthcare provider, certified in Maryland, of course, but are not limited to licensed clinical social workers. It can be midwives, it can be registered nurse practitioners, therapists, and acupuncturists. We can see at the bottom, it is very broad. So um, I would say do with that what you will. Um, So we'll go to scenario three, time limit with an exemption. So Maria isn't working or training, but this would normally mean that Maria uses her first time limit month, but Maria submits a I'm sorry, an FIA 500A form showing she has a disability that is preventing her from full-time work. Months 2, 3, and 4, Maria still does not work, volunteer, or train. No time limit month is used because she remains exempt from these work requirements. In month 5, Maria decides she wants to volunteer because she feels a bit better. She's still exempt, so her volunteering hours are optional and her benefits will continue. So Maria never uses her 3-month time limit because she is exempt due to her disability and turning in that 500 A form. So we'll talk about ABAWD warning notices. So these notices are automatically generated. Usually at first you will receive something called a consolidated work notice, which is informing you of what the work requirements are, and how you can fulfill them and what are some exemptions. Um, but they will generate warning notices for each month that you've used your time limit month. So you will receive a ABAWD first warning, ABAWD second warning, ABAWD third warning before you receive a closure notice. So these notices are meant to inform the recipient about the time limit policy, how to report changes in employment, or just other relevant changes that um, may change their time limit, for example.
Yeah, it's Andrea. Just wanted to note there are a few questions in the chat already. Did you want to wait until you're done or take questions now?
I think we were gonna wait towards the end, right, Allison?
Um, Whatever you'd like to do, Claudette. I did see one about self-employment, which I think is a great question. So I don't know if you want to circle back to that.
Yes, so for self-employment, they do require different rules. I believe if you are self-employed to be exempt from ABOD work requirements, you need to fulfill 30 hours a week of self-employment to be exempt from these ABOD work requirements. It should be more information should be linked in like the exemptions page of the DHS website, but if you want to drop your email in the chat, I can also email you some more information, but you should be able to self-attest that you are self-employed, are fulfilling 30 hours. Oh, for work verification? Yeah, sorry. But if you are self-employed, you can be exempt as well but you just have to fulfill a different like um time requirement or like work requirements. But for work verification, I believe a self-attestation should be accepted.
Thanks for that. I will go ahead and I'll pull information from those resources and make sure that we answer that question in the follow-up.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll go over good cause. So good cause is um kind of like an excused absence of work requirements. So, for example, a recipient who has been subject to the work requirements has missed some hours of work because of good cause. So good cause are things usually beyond the person's control, which can be personal illness, the illness of another household member, such as a child, a partner, whoever else is living in the household. Household emergencies and lack of transportation are some examples of good cause. So for the sake of good cause, you will be considered to have met your full work requirement if you receive good cause from a case manager. So good cause is expected to last 30 days, as is the month. And you're considered, like I was mentioning, you are considered to have met your work requirement even if you were absent. So verification is only required if there is uncertainty about the situation, which is up to the case manager's discretion. So regaining eligibility for SNAP. So if a recipient has already received their 3 quote unquote free months of SNAP benefits and is not exempt or meeting work requirements, their case will close. So to regain eligibility, the person must reapply and verify that they're meeting work requirements or fall under an exemption. Recipients who continue meeting the work requirements can keep receiving SNAP benefits. So if a person regains eligibility through employment, but then later stops meeting work requirements, they can receive an additional 3 months of benefits, but this can only happen one time in a 36-month period. So, for example, this is always a bit complicated to explain, but if a person meets the work requirements, has already used their free 3 months, they meet the work requirements, they may be eligible for another 3 months, but this can only happen once in 3 years. So a total of 6 months, but you need to make sure that the person has completed work requirements first before they're eligible for an additional 3 months. So here are just some information on what to do if you receive an ABAWD notice. So if you're working, reporting your employment hours to DHS, which we will have the information for OESS later. If you need assistance in finding work, asking DHS about enrolling in an employment and training program. If you have a disability that makes you unable to work, filling out a 500A form, and getting a diagnosis from a healthcare professional and turning that into DHS to exempt you from work requirements. And overall best practice is to just have SNAP information up to date. And then here's some more Maryland benefits and the DHS call center number. And then we have a volunteer network where we're having other nonprofit organizations, other partners, anyone who's able to offer volunteer hours, fill out this form, which is something that it's kind of like a resource guide that we're trying to create to connect clients to volunteer opportunities near them to fulfill these ABAWD work requirements. And that's it. I am available. I feel like we're good on time for some questions if anyone has any.
Yeah, thanks, Claudette. I've seen a few other questions come in the
Tienes tu
chat.
llamada perdida.
I'm going to go ahead and mute people who are not muted. I also wanted to acknowledge that I know there was some technical difficulties at the beginning of the meeting as there were two competing Zoom links, so I apologize for that. But if you missed the beginning of this, it is being recorded, and that recording will go out to all meeting attendees, so you won't miss any of the information as well as the slides will go out. I did see a question that I addressed in the chat, and then another follow-up question. Mindy had a question around do the employment and training programs that count as meeting the work requirement have to be SNAP ENT programs? And They do not have to be SNAP ENT programs. The benefit of using a SNAP ENT program is that they do all the paperwork for you, so that it's all connected and you meet the work requirement without the client or the program having to do any paperwork. But the forms that Claudette shared earlier would have to be filled out by any workforce development program that was not a SNAP ENT program, but it does still meet the work requirement. And then Mindy had a follow-up, wanting to know who the case manager is that decides if absences are going to be approved. I think that this was for the good cause exemption.
So we've actually received this question a lot, which we've noticed that some clients never even speak to a caseworker, don't know if they have a designated caseworker. So it would be the person that they talk to in the moment when they're trying to explain that they were unable to meet their work requirements. So this can be either going in person to the DSS office or whoever you are able to speak with on the phone regarding your case. So essentially, that's who the case manager or caseworker would be a better word, um, would be able to do that
Hmm.
and apply the good cause.
Yeah, I think that's something that we definitely want to be, finding out some more information about and how to apply that here in Montgomery County. I don't know if anyone from the OESS team who might be on the call, would like to speak to that. Not to put anyone on the spot, but we can connect later about that because I think it would be good to get, more clarification on how to get that.
Okay, good afternoon.
Hey, Yvonne.
Allison, hey, how are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, sure. And I know Carolina is here also, and Jose, while he is with Constituent Services, I see that he is also on the call. What was your question?
Just around if someone is seeking a good cause exemption, do they just reach out to the customer service and assistance center to speak with a representative there, or is there a different process?
Well, they will speak with the caseworker.
Okay, so
Yes.
a
And
caseworker will.
typically if they have been assigned to or they have been informed to contact Equios and through Equios working with them, they realize that there could be potential for good cause, they would send them back to us. But usually that discussion would happen during the interview phase and the caseworker would make that determination on good cause.
So it's an
Okay, but if it's somebody who's already active and already in process, as I hear, Claudette, thank you very much for the detailed explanation and the different scenarios. And so if you are looking at somebody who is currently active, right, and now goes into a situation that may warrant good cause, then they would have to they will contact the CSAC, the
Mhm.
Customer Service and Assistance Center, who will direct them, who will then make sure that somebody, a caseworker, is communicating with that person to explore what their situation is to determine whether it warrants good cause. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So when in doubt, they could always contact the customer
Yeah,
service
so
and
there are
assistance center.
multiple, yeah,
Okay.
there are multiple
Okay.
ways. There are people we can give good cause upfront when they apply based on their current situation,
Okay.
right? And that would be a temporary thing with, it's funny, we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. And looking at, say, for example, even though we know that homelessness is no longer
Mm-hmm.
an exemption factor, but we could look at someone's situation to determine whether it's a chronic situation, there are children involved, over 14, whatever the circumstance is, because I don't want to make it a one size fits all. But
Gotcha.
whatever the circumstance is, the worker at that time would make that determination based on what the customer presents to determine whether this qualifies for good cause. And usually, good cause will be limited, right? And in the discussions with DHS, they say you will review the case at the next MBR or recertification, or if the customer does an interim change anywhere in the process. So once you grant it, it's not lasting.
Right.
It's it's temporary, and you will follow up with that observation to see at the readers, at the MBR, to see if that continues to exist. For somebody who is already active, it's a little different because they may be in process, they may be where they are working, something happens, and now there is a need to look at whether we want to grant them good cause for those preceding months, and then we will do that again up until their recertification or
Thank you.
MBR, whatever comes first.
Yes, yes, yeah. I think it's a good distinction between a permanent exemption due to a disability versus a good cause exemption, which is
That's right.
temporary and more circumstantial. I think that um, when you brought up the homelessness situation, they were reading my mind. I think a lot of people are particularly concerned about that population and trying to meet work requirements.
Yeah.
I see that there is something in the chat about that. And I think if there is any um, guidance or kind of suggestions for how we can help that population get maybe a temporary good cause exemption while the community kind of builds up capacity to connect those individuals to workforce training programs. I think that would be helpful for the group.
Well, I did bring this up in a DHS meeting, and again, knowing that it's no longer an exemption, we cannot just arbitrarily say, "Oh, we give it an ex." It's not an exemption. It would be a good cause, and each person's situation is different. That's why I want to be clear that it's not a blanket. Oh, if somebody is homeless, we're just going to give them good cause. You have to explore what the situation is. The caseworker would ask detailed questions, get information from the customer to make that determination. Unlike when it was an exemption.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That is helpful.
Yes. But we are very sensitive to that and understand the needs of, people. So
Yeah, yeah, and as William points out, it's just a lot of barriers for that particular population for sure.
yes.
There's a couple slides that I wanted to share as well. I just wanted to make sure to highlight the Montgomery County SNAP ENT vendors that we have, and these are the ones that are located in Montgomery County. I know that several of these are, members of the SNAP work group, and I will be sending out resources from each of these vendors with our follow-up documents. We've had IRC present before on this meeting. We've had Union Kitchen present before on this meeting. I don't know if anyone is from either organization on the call or from CECG wants to say anything about their SNAP ENT program. I wanted to make sure to make space for that. I don't know, Tim, if you're here from IRC.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for sharing this information, Allison. Um, International Rescue Committee has been working with immigrants, helping people find jobs for many years. And we do have a SNAP implement and training program and are now expanding the reach of our programs to as we do outreach for clients to meet our outcomes for the year. So open to any Montgomery County or Prince George's County, but especially Montgomery County for this meeting, residents who are receiving SNAP and not TCA, and we are happy to help them meet these work requirements and improve their financial situation.
Thanks so much, Tim. And I know you sent me some flyers, so I'll be sure to get those out to the group as well. I will say that this is, this is the list from the DHS website, which has the full list of SNAP ENT vendors. These are the statewide ones that I pulled. these all say that they help Montgomery County residents as well as residents across the state. So I wanted to be sure to list those. I'll be sending the full list out with the meeting follow-up minutes, but I know that DHS is in the process of adding several more vendors, and I was just checking with them right before this meeting. The list is not quite ready yet, but they say it'll be ready by the end of the week. They went from having 30 SNAP ENT vendors statewide to 48. I don't know how many of those are Montgomery County specific. I'm hopeful we added a few more here in Montgomery County. I know that there were a lot of questions around how to become a SNAP ENT partner. Um, this is the information that we got from DHS, was contact information for Candace Roberts at DHS. She's the SNAP ENT Assistant Director. If you reach out to her, please copy JD and Graham. They are the individuals who work with the SNAP outreach organization so that they can be in the loop. I don't know if they are accepting new SNAP ENT partners right now for this cycle. It's a 3-year cycle, so I think it's an FY24 to FY26 cycle. So they may be looking to accept more for next federal fiscal year. I don't know, but it's certainly worthwhile to reach out if you're interested in it and start the process. Because as we are expanding the groups that now have to meet work requirements. It's really important that they have more resources. And like I mentioned earlier, if someone does work with a SNAP ENT partner, that really helps the administrative burden of continually proving your work that you're meeting the work requirement, and you don't have to do that paperwork because the SNAP ENT vendor is doing it for you. I also wanted to make sure everybody has the OASS information of how to reach the Customer Service and Assistance Center. We're very lucky to have that here in Montgomery County. Other jurisdictions don't have that and are, having to call just the general state helpline there. And then just wanted to focus on some next steps that I think us as a group can really work on together. Um, I think, this meeting is the first step toward putting together a resource guide for Montgomery County for the able-bodied adults without dependents and the work requirements that they have to meet. So a lot of resources will go out after this meeting, and then we will compile them on our website. We'll work with our partners such as Maryland Hunger Solutions to make sure that all those resources are readily available, and we'll continue to add to them. I think we're particularly looking to add the workforce development programs that are not SNAP ENT programs because we want to make sure that we're connecting residents who are now ABAWDs to those programs, because even though they do require a little bit more paperwork, they do meet the work requirement, and it's very important to connect residents to any workforce development program that they can meet, that they can use to meet the work requirement. And then, we really want to reach the groups that are now affected by the expansion of the ABAWD designation. So that would be those experiencing homelessness. It would be seniors up to age 64. It would be those with children where the youngest child in the household is 14. So it's a pretty big expansion of work requirements. Also, veterans are no longer exempt from work requirements. Adults aging out of foster care are no longer exempt. So we're going to see a lot of populations that didn't have to meet the work requirement before, especially for our seniors who may have not been working for a while, who will now need to meet the work requirement, or go through one of the administrative hurdles in order to get an exemption. So we really want to provide training and support for those directly for those residents, but particularly the frontline staff that are at organizations that assist those residents. So if you're at an organization like that, we really want to hear from you. We want to hear what would be the best way to reach your population, what kind of training materials you need, what resources you need. Because you already have that relationship with that population. and we're here to be the experts in SNAP and in meeting the SNAP work requirement. So we just really want to help bridge that need. So we've already done some outreach, but if you haven't heard from us and you would like help with this, you can go ahead, put your email in the chat, or just reach out directly to me, and I'll follow up with you. Um, and then, as Claudette mentioned, I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for volunteering at our local nonprofits here in Montgomery County to meet the work requirement. So I think that, certainly everything, including our large number of food assistance providers that we have here in the county, could really use the extra help and the extra support. So that's something else that we wanna continue to work on, along with Maryland Hunger Solutions and their network. So those are just sort of my thoughts on some next steps for the group. I'm going to take a look at the chat now because I wasn't able to see it when I was talking, but if there is, I think I've addressed how more people can be added to the SNAP ENT program by reaching out to DHS. The list of the SNAP ENT vendors will go out in the meeting follow-up. And I see that Tim has nicely addressed William's question about TANF. Are there any other? Oh, I see Anne. Yep, and we will have a link to Claudette's presentation as well as a recording of this meeting. So, with that, any other questions from the larger group? We still have about 15 minutes left of the meeting, and I really wanted to leave time to talk about ways to partner, ways to reach the newly impacted populations, partnerships to build. So, please jump in and let me know your thoughts.
Hey, so
Hey, Emery.
I'll I'll come on here for a second to just note, I did see that we have a number of folks from MCPS joining this call today, and I know that Hope McGuire was particularly interested in, opportunities that parents might have to volunteer at their child's school. And I would also just stress that through the school-based food and assistance resources grant, we do also have a number of providers, food assistance providers that are tied in with school sites. And so that could be, another potential volunteering opportunity with those sites to either, help out at food distributions, or if it's something like weekend bags, to help pack bags. So there could be, a number of flexible options, that could be available to families if they're looking to do something through their school site to meet this requirement.
Thanks for that, Emery. Any other thoughts? Are there any other groups that serve any of the newly impacted populations that want to speak from their perspective and some of the barriers that they think that they'll be facing?
So Dana just put in the chat what I was thinking
Mhm.
because we at Mana have thought about the
Sure.
volunteer piece. Most of our volunteer gigs are much shorter in duration. It's possible we could put together like a couple of new opportunities. Is that really worth worthwhile. Maybe it is for obviously those two people who could work, who
Right.
could volunteer for the required number of hours, but that does seem challenging. So I am curious how other nonprofits are thinking about this and how when Maryland Hunger Solutions like put together the idea of the directory, like what was the thought around how it would work?
I will say too, I know that it is 20 hours a week, but that can be a combination of work and volunteering at one location or another location. So I think if someone has maybe, a 15-hour per week job and they're able to pick up a few hours a week volunteering, that would then help them meet the work requirement in a meaningful way. So I don't think we have to think about it as you have to, if you're going to provide volunteer opportunities, you have to provide a 20-hour a week volunteer opportunity. And Dana, it's the form that Claudette shared earlier. It's just a verification form. It's one page, and so that's all that would be needed, signed off by the nonprofit organization. Do any of you foresee any other barriers to hosting SNAP recipients for volunteer opportunities?
So I'll just ask really quickly a follow-up, just so I'm clear. Um, there's no kind of pre-certification or anything that we would have to do to say that we are, if we're signing off for somebody, because like like even with students getting SSL hours, we have to be certified that we're an SSL provider, and then we can sign the forms. We don't have to do anything like that. Just want to be really clear. Because we have had an increase in people applying to something we put on the volunteer site, like an admin volunteer, and all of a sudden I had all these people, and I'm like, oh, it's because of the new work requirements. So I just want to be really clear what would be the responsibility of agencies if we then try to create volunteer opportunities for people.
From what I've heard, none. There isn't like a certification that you have to go through to like have someone volunteer at your site. It When I spoke to DHS, they were clear that it could be a nonprofit organization. It could also be a community school, like Anne Marie was mentioning, or like parents looking for volunteer opportunities at like their children's schools and things like that. But there is no, that we know of so far, any requirement for any organizations to like have SNAP recipients volunteer to meet their work requirements. All that's really needed from the organization is someone to just sign the paper to say that, to verify their hours, that they've been working at that place, I don't know, 10 hours a week,
Yeah, yeah.
using that 500B form.
Exactly, and that form just got put in the chat. So as far as we know, we've been told that's the only thing that is needed is that form as a verification. And there's no pre-certification needed. I know the hoops that you have to go through to become an SSL hour provider, but I think that's more of an MCPS thing. I mean, it's I think we will go with what they're telling us now. And I think that's, again, sort of how Claudette mentioned earlier in terms of also the disability exemptions and who's allowed to sort of sign off on those. I think we should take whatever leeway is being given right now in terms of these forms and interpretation. I think that there is still some debate over the interpretation of some components of HR1, which changed a lot of different SNAP policy, and I know that Maryland DHS is pushing back on some of the interpretations of that bill and that law. So I think we should, use whatever kind of leeway that we can right now to, sort of take advantage of like we can use nonprofits for work, meeting the volunteer requirement, the work requirement, until we're told that there's some other process that we have to meet. But right now, this is the process that we've been given in the form that we've been given. We want to make sure that any nonprofit who, like Dana said, if you have people reaching out to you, want to volunteer, need to meet the work requirement, um, this is the process that we've been told for right now. Any other questions, thoughts, any other populations to talk about? I don't know if there's anyone here who serves veterans. Find that, particularly hard to understand that they are no longer exempt from work requirements. But that's another population that will need to meet work requirements now. So we have done, some outreach to veterans groups as well. We plan along with MANA, with Maryland Hunger Solutions, to kind of, bring this training to other groups. So like I said, if you have a group of residents or you want to train your staff, happy to come and provide those resources. I think it's an evolving situation. And as we get more resources and more information, we'll get them out. But I think it's just really important that everyone understand the changed landscape and just how many more residents are gonna need to meet these work requirements in order to keep their SNAP benefits. All right. Well, if there are no other questions or comments or anything, I'll be sending out the resources after the meeting and appreciate all of your participation and your thoughts and your partnership going forward. And you'll be hearing more about me and the rest of the team about this soon. So thank you all.